Welcome to the Hustle or Bust podcast powered by Paver Art. Our mission is simple: to dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, small business, and all the success, struggle, and challenges that need to be confronted in the pursuit of growth. We celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, but perhaps most important, we want you to learn at least one idea that you can put into action immediately to make your investment in time worthwhile.
On this episode, we speak to Marklyn Johnson, comic, host, and motivational speaker and two-time author. We dive into his journey as a solo entrepreneur and some valuable lessons he's learned along the way. We hope you enjoy it. Marklyn, I don't know if you remember how we first met. Do you remember that story?
Fabio's, and I thought you were about to whip my ass.
So we're in a local town pizzeria, a great little pizzeria in Fanwood, which is in the middle of Scotch Plains. Sure. And Hope, Dominic, and Kim and I, we're at Fabio's, we're eating pizza, and I'm looking in the corner over there, and I'm like, I think that's that guy Marklyn, isn't it? From, he's kind of a local celebrity in our town. And she goes, yeah, I think it is. And Kim was a little apprehensive because, she knew you as a troublemaker in town. I'm like, nah, he's a great dude. I'm going to go introduce myself. So I go up to, and he thought I was coming up to roll up on him or something. But what I remember about that is, I introduced myself. You go right into, his kindness was unbelievable. He starts talking to Dominic. I said, Dom's like an aspiring YouTube figure or trying to figure out the medium. He goes into like a 5-minute thing on things to think about as you're developing content. Do you remember that piece?
Yes.
You've always been, and I got to thank you, you've always been generous to Dominic and trying to coach him and mentor him. So that's always a hats off to you for being kind like that to younger kids.
I think one of the problems that we have as we get older, we keep forgetting that we were young at one point, and a lot of us are lost. We don't know. And what I found out over time is it takes one person to spark a thought to get you to do what you want to do. And when I started doing this, I just thought I was just going to talk crap on the internet. Oh, I'll just be an internet crap talker. And then it took somebody to see me and think, hey, I think you have something here. I see this in you and you should try it and don't stop doing it. And I realized that. And as I kept going, one of my things is if somebody tells me that they want to do something, I do everything in my power to take what I've done and give it to them. It's easy to say I'm doing my thing, leave me alone. That's the easy way.
John, sure.
The best way is to say, no, let me give you, and I've learned that watching sports. It takes 2 minutes to say hello, sign an autograph. I don't sign autographs though. I don't. I have books and people are like, sign my book. I'm like, leave me alone. I don't want to sign any books.
Now hold on. Let's dig a little deeper into that, Marklyn. Why now? Is it because there's a shy side to you, or is it because what's the reason why?
I'm not so the joke is this, and Mark knows it. Yes, around town, I am kind of like a local celebrity.
Sure.
So there is this thing that everybody knows me, but I don't like that everybody knows me. I'm just if you know me and you follow what I do, I'm just living my life. And my life just happens to be kind of, I have a podcast, I go on stage, and I have fun doing it. And they always say, be careful what you say because words have power. I just don't see myself as that guy that, I'm supposed to be signing autographs. And I'm nice to everyone. But when they're like, hey, can you sign, I bought your book. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. And it's also, I don't like my penmanship. I don't, I forgot how to write in cursive.
Me too.
So it's broken. It's not full. It's broken. So I'll start writing and I'll say, oh, how do I write it? It happens every time. How do I make an R? I forget how to make the R. I'm like, come on. So it's I would love to be able to be that guy. So what I decided, I'm getting a rubber stamp.
That's a great idea.
Everyone's going to say boom, and I'll rubber stamp it, and then I'll put my initials, because I could do my initials all day. I'll rubber stamp it, put my initials, and keep moving.
Give him one of your black marble tablets that you bought.
That I bought from Five Below?
275 of from Five Below.
Oh, geez.
And so he can practice his cursive.
Well, why don't you go into, give a little bit about your background for people that don't know you. Talk a little bit about what is Mr. Direct, what is Real Talk, what brought you to this stage in life?
Oh, man. Graduated school, class of 91, Scotch Plains Fanwood High School. Big ups to the Raiders. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was lost, really confused what I wanted to do in life. I was kind of just squandering around. And one thing that picked up was I started playing basketball in Tamaqua Park and all around Scotch Plains, Westfield YMCA, stuff of that nature. And I wasn't great, but that I became known as the pickup basketball guy. Like, that's what he does. He plays basketball. All my friends were going away to college. They were, working jobs. I was an only child living at home with aging parents, and I really just didn't have anything going for myself. And then I decided if I was going to do something, I have to do something that I could do for the rest of my life. When everybody else was talking retirement, everybody else was talking all these crazy things that they were going to do, I'm like, I don't ever see myself retiring, one. And number two, it was, well, I'm going to do something that is always in need. So I went to school for computers, DeVry College of Technology, graduated, and I like computers. When you're following your dream, I believe no matter how religious, spiritual, whatever you are, God pushes you in a direction that you might not know that's where he's pushing you to do things. So I started building my own computer. Like, I literally looked up how to build a computer, built a computer, went to computer school. At one point, I networked 3 or 4 different computers together. So this one was my storage files. Like, I would just store stuff on this. This was my internet computer. And then I decided, okay, it's time for me to get a regular job. My first job was Verizon Wireless. I've had a couple of jobs before then, but my first job was Verizon Wireless, and I was up and down Manhattan in New Jersey working the stores. And I became good friends with a manager. Working there, I realized it still wasn't enough for me, but I was just living. I was like, I'm making a check. I'm living at home. I'm doing what I got to do. And I realized, there's more to it, but I still didn't know, which is funny. Because one of the stores, I remember now that I'm talking to you guys, I remember walking in downtown in Greenwich Village for one of the stores, and one of the guys gave me a comedy flyer, and I believe Dave Chappelle's face was on the comedy flyer. This is before this might have been during or after or somewhere around there. But it was, like, come to Greenwich Village, catch comedy shows, stuff like that. And I remember every time I walked by one of those places, there was this, like, wow. When you look in a store window out of curiosity? So when I was walking by these comedy spots, I wouldn't just walk by and say maybe one day. I'd always poke my head in and be like, maybe. But never had the courage to do it. I then lost my job at Verizon Wireless. And I needed to make a big move. And I always read, when you want to do something big, you've got to make movements in your life. You got to make change. So I moved to Minnesota. I knew a couple of people out there. And Minnesota's, oddly enough, people don't know, Minnesota's actually the Minneapolis area is really popping. It's really a good, if you want to work corporate America, you really go to like Minneapolis, Minnesota. They have Honeywell, Best Buy, Target, just to name a few, General Mills. They have some big companies there. They have I think 18 Fortune 500 companies, something like that. So it's a small market, but it's think of Minneapolis is like Elizabeth to us. It just has skyscrapers, So I moved there and I started working. First job there was Ecolab, another Fortune 500 company. And I've always had the gift of gab, so I could always get a job. But none of those jobs fulfilled me. None of those jobs were really who I was at my core. And while I was working at General Mills, I started doing podcasting. And it was really not podcasting first. I was doing what you call just posting on Facebook. And I was always honest, always saying the stuff that I thought. And I remember in my, I was reading something and a guy said, if you tell your truth, people are going to get pissed off because nobody likes the truth. And I realized that when you deal with sexist, racist, misogynistic people, when you deal with people who are anti-Semite, when you deal with people, any walk of life, once you have trained your brain to think in only one way, anybody that dares to say a truth that is the opposite, it will piss them off. Just in general, it just pisses them off. And I kind of wanted to get my name out there, but I didn't know. When Obama was elected, I saw people, and Mark, you know this, I started seeing people say some of the most closeted racist stuff out loud as if it wasn't racist. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And it sparked something. So I just started speaking out because I noticed, first of all, I noticed a lot of people of color wouldn't speak out. They were kind of scared to speak out because they didn't want to be the angry, hostile black person. Because that was always, and Mark, you saw it in some of the threads.
Yep.
I was always the angry black guy. And if you read the tone of what I was writing, it was always like, hold on, did you ever think about it from the view of a person of color? Did you ever think about how we exist? Did you ever, and people would just get mad because how dare you say this to us? How dare you speak in these tones? So I got a little bit more into it and I started speaking about relationships. I was Steve Harvey before Steve Harvey, by the way.
Right.
I was talking about relationships long ago. And I kept doing it and kept doing it. And I got sort of a name. And while I was working in Minnesota, gentlemen, if any of you know the Medea movies, his stunt double is a comedian named Shed G.
That Tyler, what's his name?
Perry.
Tyler Perry.
Yeah.
Shed G said, I see something in you. He's a Christian comic. So he tried to give me a clean joke. And he was like, just say the joke like this. I dropped so many shits and I don't know if you guys.
No, you're good.
You're good to go.
You're good.
He's like, dude, I did not say one swear word. And believe me, it's not that he curses badly, but off air amongst friends, every now and then a word slips. But when he gave me the joke, I was dropping F-bombs, shits, and dams. He's like, man, I guess it's just in you to be like that. And he didn't mean it in a bad way. So I did a couple of mics out there and it still didn't kick in. I was still kind of whatever. In 2014, my dad wanted me to come home, so I came back home. He didn't tell me he was as sick as he was. So when I came back, I was determined to never go back to corporate America again. And I said I won't.
Basically, you moved back to New Jersey.
Yes, I moved back to New Jersey in 2014, and I said, I'm going to make something of this. I don't know what. I'm going to make something of this. And at the time, racism and all this partisan bullshit hadn't really reached the boiling point. It was still simmering. It was still starting to just, get to its little bit of level, conversations here and there. And I started doing mics. And I started going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Big ups to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Big ups to everybody I went to school with because it set a passion and a fire in me. And from there, I started working I became a street team personnel for New Jersey 1015. And New Jersey 1015 is New Jersey's people station. I got an email out of nowhere. Hey, are you still interested? Now, imagine me I'm trying to remember, 2014. So I had to have been 43, about 43 years old. I was a 43-year-old intern for New Jersey 1015.
That's how you
Awesome.
start. Yeah.
And I'm working around a bunch of 20-something-year-olds. And I've always been that confident, cocky guy. Like, this is me. I used to kind of humble it up and be like, ooh, I got to be less than who I am. And something clicked. I'm going to always be me. Because the minute you step on stage and somebody gives you a microphone, if you don't go in balls out and say, this is me, this is what I'm doing, the audience feels it. And when they feel it, they turn on you. And when they turn on you, you can't turn it back because now you're faking being confident. So the minute you walk on stage, you have to be the shit. You have to be the man. And a lot of the interns didn't know how to take. I'm only friends with one of the interns out of that. And it's funny. She's this little short Italian chick. Her last name is Guido. And I started cracking jokes on her from day one. Like I'm calling her midget. I'm calling her, like I said so many crazy things because her last name is Guido, right? And she's laughing. She's getting a kick out of it. And she's talking smack to me right back. Oh, and there's two other ones. There's one other one that I'm friends with too, who's a reporter in Pennsylvania, a major reporter. She just won 2 Emmys. These 2 girls were my interns. The one I called Princess, and the other one I just called her. I called her Gidget Guido because she was a Guido, and she was the size. You guys remember the TV show Gidget?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Right. So she was so small. I call her Gidget Guido, and she loved it. And I remember we were at some event, and I said, "Hey, midget, do me a favor and go in the back of the van." So she's laughing, but she's going to the back of the van. One of the girls turns to me and goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe you called her a midget. How offensive." And I looked at her and I said, whoa, ask her if she's offended. She turns around and she goes, "Marklyn's been talking shit to me and everybody else since day one. Really? You're really going to try and get offended behind it? Do you see me offended?" Like literally it was, if I'm offended, then be offended. But don't be offended for me because I would never address that girl that way.
Of course.
And I realized then there was a shift of personalities between that generation and our generation. Our generation, if we didn't talk shit to you, we didn't like you.
Right.
We would just ignore you. Like, I don't want to be bothered. Leave me alone. But if we talk shit to you, that means, like, my friends joke around and call me a superstar. Like, it's funny. They're like, "Hey, superstar comedian." I know it's in jest, and I'm not mad. I get it. It's funny stuff. So from there, I kept going, and I ran into a fellow graduate, Scotch Plains, Dan Catullo. Dan Catullo is a Hollywood producer who has produced, but he's also like an events producer, so he produces concerts. Dave Matthews in Central Park, he did back in like 2005, 2000 something. I didn't even know this.
Massive
but
show. Yeah.
He's worked with some. We were listening to the radio, and he was like, "Oh, I produced a show for them. Oh, He produced for over 300 artists.
Wow.
So he's very known in Hollywood circles. When he comes back to Jersey, everyone calls him Hollywood, right? Now, Dan is this big producer. I'm this asshole talking shit on Facebook. Dan is a multi-millionaire, very successful doing his thing, walks up to me. Now, understand, I've known Dan since probably first grade. Understand, Dan walks up to me and Dan goes, "I love what you're doing on Facebook. I see what you're doing on Facebook." And I said, "Dan, I see what you're doing. I would love to work with you." Gives me his business card. We have a meeting. Next thing I know, I'm driving down to West Virginia for a Brad Paisley production. 6-hour ride. Beautiful, beautiful ride, by the way. And I walk in, and it's all these heavyweights. And I'm walking in like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they're all like, "Yo, dude, seriously." And the first thing Dan's like, he's never worked production. He's new to all this. Calm the fuck down. Because these are all, it's high pressure. And I'm just like this. I'm here to learn. Tell me what you want me to do. I'm okay with it. And Dan tells this story. We have important stuff to do, but I have a podcast. So we have important shows going on. And I'm like, "Well, we already did this. This is just the show itself." And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "I'll catch it another time. I got a podcast to do." That's how, and that's why he works with me, because I was dedicated to doing and Mark, I was doing a podcast twice a week.
Right.
So before everybody jumped on the podcast wheel, I was doing podcasts. I was putting it out. I have so much content. It's beyond ridiculous. And from that point forward, I just kept going, and I worked with Dan, and I started doing comedy. Before pandemic hit, I was doing comedy like 3 times to 4 times a day. I would go to open mics, and it became like clockwork every day. Every day I was just doing open mics. And for those of you that doesn't know what an open mic is, you go to a room with other comics. Other comics do not care about your jokes. You're an idiot to them. So when you're telling your jokes, they might laugh, you might catch their attention, but you've got to get used to the silence. And that's how you get better, because you hear yourself. It's one thing to write a joke out, but it's another thing to hear yourself say it and be like, oh, that's too wordy. Oh, you're not getting to the point. Oh, you're not, that punchline doesn't work. You got to move it around. And I just kept doing it. And when the pandemic hit, it hit me hard.
Well, let me, if I can stop you there, Marklyn. How were you paying you were paying your bills through your work with Dan through production? Is that what you were doing while you were pursuing comedy?
Yes. And believe me when I tell you, it was a struggle. It was because we were a bootleg company. So we had months where we weren't getting paid.
Right.
And because I was getting paid under the table, I didn't always have money.
Sure.
So the struggle was real. I faced eviction, I would say, 12 times.
What are you working, an 18-hour day? It sounds like to do both of those jobs and do them both justice,
I had quit.
That's a long day.
I had quit New Jersey 1015 at that point. And in production, if you're not in production world, if you don't have any projects going on, you're still getting paid for being in the office. But because we didn't have money coming in, I would tell Dan, and again, this was a luxury of being friends with the owner. I'd be like, Dan, I'll see you later. I'm going to go down the street, and I'm going to do some open mics at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So when everybody else is working and earning a living, I'm like, well, he knows he owes me the money. I'm in office if he needs me. He could get me on my cell phone. He could get me however he needs.
Sure. I'm
just going to go ahead and do an open mic. And, the thing about the New York City, this is what I tell people. I do open mics in Jersey. It's not the same as going into New York City. In New York City, everybody's trying an actor, a producer, a big-time comic. They're trying to really find a way to make it a business. So even if you don't think you're going to do it as a business long-term, they need to put their feet into the New York City comedy scene for at least 3 hardcore solid years. That's why you see a lot of college students get into it when they come to New York, because it's right there. So if you have a love and you have a passion for it, it's right there for you to touch. Well, it's at your fingertips.
How long did you spend doing the open mics, working your craft, before you actually got paid for your first gig?
I still don't get paid for doing gigs. I have to produce my own shows.
Really?
Yeah.
Talk a little. Do me a favor. Talk a little bit about that. I'm interested in that.
Well, here's the deal. Like anything, comedy is very cliquish. And unfortunately, some comics think that they're experts on what's funny and what's not. Mm-hmm. Stage name is Mr. Direct. It used to be just Mr. Direct. Now it's Marklyn Mr. Direct Johnson. The reason being is, if you and Mark, you probably heard some of the skits I've done. There's no pun. There's no off-branch stuff. My jokes are reality. Like straight, like I'm working on a new joke about everybody is talking about how they've got to get ready. They got to get in shape. Ooh, beach body ready. Ooh, summer body ready. I'm 49 years old. I'm trying to get casket ready, That's you get to a certain age, you're trying to get casket ready. Like, ooh, he looked good. Yeah, he was in the gym every day, right? He was in the gym working out just so he could look good in his casket, you know? Like look at the shoulder development on him. Yeah, we had to get him an extra double wide casket because he had those broad shoulders, you know? And I love the fact that you guys are laughing about it because that's where that came from. It's once we get older, at a certain point, we're like, what are we working out for? What are we doing all this for?
Wearing a strap tee in the casket. Right. It's unbelievable. That's going to go somewhere with that joke. That's pretty good.
But it's so direct. It's straight to the point, and it's it's how we look at life, and that's why I call myself Mr. Direct. And in some circles, people can't handle it because some comics are always looking for the whimsical stuff. Mm-hmm. They're always looking for the slapstick stuff. And I'm like, no, the comedy is in the truth. If you tap into it, and every comic says it, it's just that some people look for different ways to get to it. And I'm like, no, the truth is like one of my friend's mom always says the most crazy racist things to me, but it's always closeted racist things. And my joke for it is, it's hard to believe this woman is racist when she makes the most delicious cakes. So
they don't go hand in hand.
It don't. It's like if you made cakes that had no flavor in them,
then you should be racist.
It's like this is some racist cake right here. Only a racist can make a flavorless cake, right? But this cake is delicious. And then when she says stuff like, oh, you people just dance really well. Like, I can't believe she's saying this while I'm eating this delicious cake. You know, the truth sells itself. So it's been hard, but what I've done, and Mark has seen this, I've reached out to my town and I've reached out to venues and I said, listen, this is what I do. I'm connected to all these comedians. And I thank Dan for this. Dan put the production bug in my ear. And I remember after I had been working with him for 2 weeks and it was kind of a trial basis, I didn't know. He said, dude, how would you like to make more money than you've ever made in your life? Now, at that point, the most I've ever made is $35,000 a year. So, I mean, like more money could mean $50,000 a year at this point.
Gotcha.
So it was, dude, not a problem. And I got to see the inner workings of production. And what we don't realize is an artist might make off a concert, an artist might make $2 million, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The producer might make $10 million because the venue, your cut of the venue, your cut of the ticket sales, putting the whole entire thing together, having to get all the cameramen, having to get security, all this stuff that people don't realize goes on in the background. As a producer off a really big production, if you're doing 2 to 3 productions a year and you're good, you could easily make anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million easily. Big productions. And that's on not even big productions, that's kind of mid-level productions. Mm-hmm. If you're doing stuff that's Hollywood level, meaning like big time movies, and let's say the budget is $50 million. Well, you're making 10 to 15% off of all that money. So you are automatically walking. So when they say somebody was the producer and director, they're double billing themselves. They're paying themselves as the director and they're taking money off the top as the producer. And that's why you see all these guys filthy, stinking rich in Hollywood, because most of them are double tapping. And you don't even talk about the small productions that they do that you don't even hear of, that they're saying, hey, I've got $2 million sitting around and I'm willing to invest it in a small budget movie. Okay, well, that $2 million might return them $2,500,000. They don't care because the money's circulating and it's not sitting still in their pocket.
Is it a closed community? Is it something that you've got to break into? Do you need to know somebody? Give us some background on that.
I will tell you, it's called the Good Old Boys Network.
Okay.
And when you're in, you're in. But if you're not in, it's hard to break in. So on that respect, that's why Tyler Perry is such a huge success, because he did plays first. And nobody believed that his plays would have any merit. You know, those are ghetto.
Sure.
Those are talking about things that people don't want to do. Those are talking about things that people don't want to be involved in. And what he did was he made his plays so successful that the movie companies came after him. And when they came after him, they didn't want to give him a good deal. So he waited until the production company, Lionsgate, was like, no, we're going to give you control. You can do what you need to do.
Lionsgate, it's major league. Yeah.
And he turned his plays, which were already meant for movies, into movies.
Wow.
And people didn't believe that he had room, that there was room. And again, unfortunately, things that are loved in the African American community and culture are not always seen how they could cross over to the other side because they think it's geared towards there. So with that being the case, Tyler Perry moved it to another level. I mean, this guy went from living in his car to being a billionaire.
Well, the production end, is that, first of all, is that who you emulate? Second of all, is that what you're shooting for? Is that what your goal is?
I emulate Dan more than I emulate Tyler Perry.
Gotcha.
That's why you see me doing comedy shows and putting them together. And what I'm dreaming of is, and this is why I stay in comedy, I'm an over-the-top magnetic host. I can do a set. I've done a set, but I'm a great host. Mm-hmm. I don't take away from the comics. I'm not looking to one-up the comics. I'm just engaging enough that in between I could come in, throw a couple of jokes out there, keep you engaged, keep the audience ready for the next guy, and then move on. I know how to keep the show flowing. And people, oddly, and it's funny, Dan said this the other day, and I didn't notice it until recently. He goes, our town used to hate you, and it looks like people are starting to love you. and I'm like, I love the hate more than I love the love, because when people start loving you, they kind of let you dwindle off. But when they hate you, they find reasons to keep you. It's weird. I want to hate you so bad. I want to keep your name out there so I can get other people to hate you too. Gotcha. When they love you, it's he's a lovable guy.
Well, it seems like your passion is comedy, but do you pay if you didn't have that production, would you be able to make a living out of that?
Hell no.
So the skills that you learned working with Dan and maybe the internships got you the production's the key to the economic model for you to be involved in that world, right?
Yes. If I could not produce comedy shows, the video I shot for you guys, I'm doing a podcast similar to that for New Jersey Weed Man. And I'm glad you brought that up. As you're going along in life and you're an entrepreneur and you're learning things, you have to learn to use all your skills in order to make a living. And you don't know where your you really don't know where your skill sets are until you're pushed to use them. A lot of people think they have a skill set, or they learned something and they walked away from it. So walking away from it, they don't realize they can make money for it. So I always tell people now, I put myself out there. I do apartment complex comedy shows. Mm-hmm. So if somebody calls me up and they're like, hey, it's going to be about 40 people. Okay, perfect. Not a problem. I can do 40 people. Oh, it's going to be 100 people. Not a problem. I just did a presentation for Scotch Plains administrators last week. And I have to thank my comedic mentality in order to do that, because I wasn't doing comedy. I was speaking on there's a big issue in some of the school systems with racism and drugs. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I really want to do, I want to be a motivational public speaker in schools to kids. Not only to follow your dreams, but how to find passion inside of themselves. So I connected with the superintendent, and she asked me if I could speak on racism. And I told her I'd be more than happy to. And I'm going to tell you guys this, which I believe a lot of people don't do. When an opportunity is put in front of you, just say yes and figure it out.
Amen, brother.
A lot of
Absolutely.
people refuse to say yes because it's out of my wheelhouse. I can't do it. Say yes. Figure it all out.
Right.
Again, it's not about if you're God, spiritual, whatever you believe in. For some reason, people see something in you to put that opportunity in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So say yes, ask questions, and then figure it out. So when she said, "Do you want to do it?" I said, "Yes, I want to do it." And we had a conversation, and it trickled into how often she wants to do it, how big. And I said, "There's a reason for this." Because I've always said, I believe this, speak your goals out loud and say it to everybody when they ask you what you want to do. People ask me, what am I? I'm a public speaker, comic host. Public speaker, comic host. The reason why I don't say that I'm a producer is because production for me is second nature. I can do it in 2 minutes. I can sleepwalk being a producer. If Mark called me right now and said, "Hey, we're doing a holiday party and we want you to do the show," I know the questions to ask him, and then it's done. It's simple, everyday things my brain thinks of. But when it comes to public speaking and everything, I was a little nervous, and I said, "All right, let's get this going." And we did it, and they told me I'd be speaking in front of 4 people. I ended up speaking in front of 30. But because I've done comedy and I've done shows with 100+ people, I just walked in front of them and did my dirt and didn't think twice about it.
Awesome.
That's great advice. One of the things I wanted to ask you, based on what you just said, look, a lot of what you do is what we do here, and that's sell, okay? And the first thing you have to learn, the first time you have to sit in front of a customer and sell something, is you got to get over the fright. You got to get over the, that pit of your stomach fear that just makes the words come out all jumbled and not right. And some people have that and some people don't. When did you realize you had it, and did you have to develop it, or did it just come naturally to you?
Again, doing mics and sitting in a room full of people not saying anything. Okay, imagine one of you guys decide you want to be a comic, mm-hmm. right? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to try it off on the people that you know. That doesn't count because they know you, so they're going to laugh and be nice to you. Yeah, that's kind of funny. The reason why you go to open mics, and you don't go to the same open mic, you start going to different ones so you experience different things.
Sure.
You go to them so that you can hear how other comics are writing, so that you're around other comics. Another comic might hear a joke and be like, "Oh, yeah, I never thought about it that way." That being the case, think about it like this, and this is important. Knowing you have 5 minutes, whatever they give you, you have to figure out a way to do your jokes in 5 minutes in silence.
Okay.
Cool if people are laughing. Hey, you got 3 people to pay attention, right? But imagine in a room full of silence, like you guys done this all the time. Imagine turning on your stopwatch right now for 5 minutes and just sit there and imagine some idiot at the front trying to tell you jokes, and you're thinking about the jokes you want to write. You're thinking about how you're going to write your jokes, which way you're going to put your jokes together. Mm-hmm. So after a while, your brain starts triggering, fuck them. I'm trying to get better with swearing, but your brain triggers and says, fuck them. I've got to do my 5 minutes no matter what. As you keep going, your friends start saying, "Hey, I kind of like what you've done. Do you want to do 8 minutes as a guest set? Hey, I kind of like what you've done. Would you like to do a 5-minute opener? Hey, I like what you've done. Would you like to do 12 minutes as a feature? 20 minutes as a feature?" Sure. My biggest thing during COVID, biggest audience, but when COVID hit, was me producing a comedy show at Scotch Plains. And I thought, we'll get like 25 people. We had 79 people in circles all divided out.
That's awesome.
Nice.
And I could hear the laughter. And I heard the laughter. Again, I wasn't supposed to host. So I said, all right, I'll host it. We did it again earlier. And people were a little hesitant. They were sitting away, which we have to figure out how to get them to sit closer, because you can't enjoy a comedy show if everyone is sitting like 80 feet away.
Sure.
So we're working the logistics out with that, which is great. But once you have learned to do silence, you learned that you don't care how many people are in the room. Because at this point, anybody could be in a room, and you're just concentrating on doing what you're going to do. Now, the reason why I was telling you I'm a great host is because most comics have sets. And when you put them on stage, if you pay attention, they're running through sets. They're not relating to the audience. My comedic style, I'm talking shit with the audience. You know what I mean? So Mike, if I saw you in the audience, I was just like, wow. So look at I would say, oh my God, look at this guy from Crosby, Hills and Nash or whatever. You know what I mean? I'd be like, oh my God, have you resurrected him? Are you the one that had sex with that lady, with the lesbian to give her a kid?
Coincidentally, yes, as a matter of fact. That's right.
And when you say coincidentally Lex, I'm like, oh, so his wife basically ain't fucking him no more. Like, my brain literally flips into that. But do you see how I relate? I automatically can relate and draw on things that pulls people in. Mm-hmm. And that is a gift that a lot of comics, they can be comics, they can't be hosts. A lot of hosts can be hosts, but they can't be comics. I can kind of do both. So if I have a set and I forget jokes, I could actually go into the crowd and make it look seamless. And no one will know that I'm just working stuff out in my brain. It's a gift.
There's people that are going to hear this, and the point I'm trying to make here is plowing through. Yeah, it sounds like you've been successful, you've failed, you've had bad nights, you've had good nights. Getting through the bad nights, how do you do that? Fear of failure, that sort of thing. You just plow right through that. I mean, I'm sensing a Marklyn movement here that's going to be powered by just say yes, and it's what I mean. It's
speaking of Marklyn movement. If you get my book, shameless plug,
perfect.
Lessons from a Shit Talker. I love it.
Well, we'll go into that because you probably hit it.
Available now on Amazon.
Awesome. Yeah. Why don't you talk a little bit about the book?
Well, if you follow the book is basically what you're saying. It's the movement. It's you have to make a decision every day to every day we wake up. That's not a decision. Your brain wakes up. You have to make a decision what you want to do with your life. It's yours. We've been conditioned to let other people make decisions for us. From the day we're born, mom and dad, what do you eat? What do you put on? When do you go to school? Why do you go to school? From the time you're 18, people say, go free and live prosperously. But here's the problem, prosperous. Here's the problem with that. For 18 years, you've been trained for somebody to tell you what to do.
Yep.
95% of us will continue to look for people to tell us what to do. And what we do is we figured how to be at the top of the list. So, okay, I'm making $500,000, but I work for a corporation that I'm still responsible to be told what to do. Most of us don't want to be told what to do, but we don't know how to go about following what we want to do. So you have to imagine what you want to do. I was sitting in a cubicle and I was like, is this all my life is going to be till the day I die? Is this all I'm going to be, is a cubicle? Hey, maybe I'll get a corner office. Now, not to really take it down some, but if you really understand the statistics, Black men do not get promoted but so much in corporate America. Mm-hmm. They just historically, statistically, we are the last ones to be promoted. We are the last ones to be given pay raises. We are the last ones to be looked at as we need to take care of him. we are usually the first ones escorted out the door. When you look at when they're doing, like right now, an article came out and said that they're going to lay people off, right? Okay. Well, if they're going to lay people off, Black people in general are usually one of the first ones to get laid off. Their value in a working environment is not seen the same way. That being the case, working in corporate America for me just was never a fit. Take away what I just said, it was never a fit. Knowing all this, I just didn't know the skill set that I had. And I've always been complimented on, wow, you have great people skills. Why don't you go into sales? But it's hard to sell shit that you don't like. If you don't believe in a product, any salesperson will tell you, if you don't believe in a product, right, you're not going to be able to do it.
No, very
Because
true.
people will, what you guys sell is remarkable. But if I didn't believe in your product and you put me out there, sales would be nothing.
Sure.
So you have to believe in a product. So sales for me wasn't anything. But as I kept going and I kept doing it, I realized I did believe in something. I believed in me. I believed in who I was. And as I started doing comedy and started getting better and kept getting better, I remember when I started doing all the open mics and started getting better, I went someplace and I was doing an open mic with some people that had seen me for a while. And at the end of my set, I heard out loud, holy fuck, what happened to him? And my brain registered, did I do something wrong? And the guy goes, no, where the fuck did all this come from? Because they didn't see all the work. That's what people don't realize. You have to put in the hours and hours and hours of work. And because I believed in myself, I had to say I can suck up the bad days.
Sure.
I can suck up the days where I'm not making any money. Because the bigger picture, if I know that I have a message that I want to deliver to the world, it's going to be received because nobody speaks like me. And this is every speaker, every comic, every actor, anyone that performs, anyone that does a business. If somebody came to business and did what you were doing right now, you guys know that you are better at what you do than them any day. It doesn't make a difference how many, people go into business. And this is the one thing I try to tell people all the time. Sure, 20 other people are doing what you're doing, but you have to believe that you are better than those 20 other people. Every time I go on stage, I'm not like him. I'm not like her. I am me. You are here to hear me and watch me do my dirt. And that is what keeps me going. That's what keeps me motivated. I have problems that I still have a problem with structuring my days because I've had over 30 years of people telling me what to do. So it's hard to break the 30-year cycle, but it's slowly coming together. I've got an assistant who works on commission and we're pulling stuff together. I'm pulling stuff out of my ass. When you start getting to the point of when you're doing good, you start pulling shit out of your ass out of nowhere. You guys know what I'm talking about.
To your point on when you're 0 to 18 years old, people are told what to do. We work with a guy, you met him, John. His wife is a teacher in the school system. She what she called it learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness.
Yes.
That's the behavior we're drilling into our kids. So your book, talk a little bit about the book, what you tried to achieve with that, and kind of how you approach the book, because the book is intriguing.
So the book was, first of all, think about when we're younger, how many times did we say, and even as adults, oh, he's just talking shit. That was it. So I'm not, long story short, I read an article that said anybody can write a book. Put yourself down, you can write a book. Everyone has a story, everyone can write a book. Now today, anybody can write a book if they want to write a book, because you could publish it yourself if you want to. So I took an edible and took a 5-hour flight to California. Edibles are legal, by the way, so I don't want to hear shit out of anybody on this podcast. It's completely legal. That being the case, I took an edible, and I was like, oh, so anybody can write a book, and I've got 5 hours to kill. I wrote my book in 5 hours.
Awesome.
No way. That's fantastic.
Sat down on an airplane and just started pounding it out. And it was my story. What I had to figure out, things I had to do, how I need to do it. I'm having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I said, it's amazing how people called me a shit talker all my life, and I look at everything I'm doing, and she goes, yeah, look at all this shit. She goes, you're doing shit. You're really good. And then I said, yeah, you can learn a lot from a shit talker. Lessons from a shit talker.
Perfect.
So the book basically explains my process. It gives you a little bit of my history, but it explains like how you got to find, like, I can actually, hold on for a second. One of the chapters is chapter 5, fear, forget everything and rise. You have to forget the way you think about things. You have to forget the way that you were doing things in the past, and you got to rise to the occasion. When someone's asking me, it was funny. I don't get requested to do a lot. This Saturday, I had a show in the city. I then had 2 offers to do shows, and they're like, dude, you kill every time you go on stage. But it was from other comics that have seen me and know, like, no, he could do this shit. So again, forget everything and rise. You got to forget what's going on, and you just got to rise to the occasion. Another thing that I always like to say is those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. It's always the assholes who don't like you.
Sure.
Who have 50 million critiques of what you're doing with your life. They don't see the day-to-day. They don't know the grind. They don't know the hustle. They don't know anything you're doing, but they've got 50 million critiques because they think that they know what to do to get to the next level. I remember a young lady was sitting in my living room. She goes, I know what you're doing. And she goes, I just think you need to be less quiet. She goes, like, I love Pete Davidson. And I'm like, bitch, I'm not trying to be Pete Davidson.
Right.
And that's the thing. Everyone thinks because they've heard a comic that they can give advice to someone else that's being a comic.
Yeah, they're a critic.
Sure.
Right? And I always told people, and I go, do you think Dave Chappelle and Pete Davidson are comics? Like, meaning, like, do you think they're the same comic? And she goes, well, I don't like Dave Chappelle. I said, exactly. Do you think Dave Chappelle doesn't give a damn that you don't like him? And then she just looked at me, and I go, if I'm in a room of 100 people, if I hear 30 people laughing at my joke, I don't care about the other 70. Those 30 people, they're going to buy a book. They're going to get a T-shirt. They're going to follow my page. And over time, that 30 becomes 300. That 300 becomes 300,000. That 300,000 becomes 3 million. So now, at the end of that, if I've got, let's say I just have 300,000 people following me over time, right? And she goes, yeah. And I go, do you think I give a damn that you don't like my comedy? And then she just looked at me and she was like, wow. And I go, those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter. And that's the mindset that people have to always keep in their head. Everyone's going to knock what you're doing. That's all. It's built into our system. I'm not shit. I don't want you to be shit. It's easier for us to knock somebody down than it is to lift someone up. And that's why when you were saying earlier how, like, I was giving, Dom advice and everything, I'd rather lift you up. I don't care if you're more successful than me. I don't care if Dom becomes the most famous producer in the world because he's like, I love being in the background. Congratulations. That's what his destiny has pushed him towards. But it's my job to lift him and to help him get there and to help him see the greatness that's within him. Because if I don't help him, then what's good of the skill set that I've earned? And same thing with you. If somebody comes to you and says, I love what you guys are doing, but you do everything to cap them and don't do everything to push them up higher, then you're not doing your job as a fellow human being. because that's what we're meant to do as human beings. Lift everyone up as much as possible. It's done in different ways, but that's what my book is about. My book is about you. Here's my story. I'm an everyday guy. You see me walking down the street, you know, I don't have 50 million people like, oh my God, look at him. I'm an everyday guy, but if I can follow my dreams, so can you.
Well, look, what I love about what you're doing, you've got public speaking, you've got production, you've got actually being a comic, producing comic shows, author. You're kind of parlaying all your skills into a number of different ways to make a living. And I'm curious, one thing that you said, Marklyn, something, I want your thoughts on how you define success. One thing that was intriguing is you were only making 35 grand back in the day. If you make 55 grand, that's awesome, right? So how do you, as you look out over the next year, 90 days, a year, 3 years, whatever you want to think about it, what's success look like for you?
Success for me in a bigger picture, within the next 3 to 4 years, 5 years, I could take a weekend off and I can fly off to Paris for 3 or 4 days and do what I want. I consider myself partially successful now. I'm not satisfied, but I don't wake up before 10 o'clock if I don't want to. So I'm a little bit annoyed with you guys making me do a 7:45 a.m. Podcast interview. I'm just joking. But I don't, right now, the one part of the success is I don't wake up until I want to.
Freedom.
Part of the success is now when I go, I in December, and this is a real quick story. COVID hit, I had to get on a corporate America job again. So I was doing computer tech support remotely, not remotely, driving to different areas, right? Because production had basically shut down, whatever. December 9th, I performed for my birthday show. I did 30 minutes of stand-up. My friends were wowed. They were like, damn, you're really good. Where did that come from? Again, you didn't see all the work I've been doing and putting together.
Yep, they never do.
So December 10th, I got fired. There's a backstory to getting fired. 3 weeks before that, every morning in the shower, I had been praying, give me the opportunity to do Real Talk full time. Give me the opportunity to do what I love full time, because I know if I could do it full time and have money coming in, I know I can make it work. And here's the thing. When you pray for it, the answers come in weird ways. If I didn't lose that job, I would still be working there now. There's this new term called quiet quitting.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the weird part. Quiet quitting means you're just barely doing enough to do the job, right? The joke is I've been quiet quitting my entire life. It's called a loud fire. Loud firing, if you will. Because that's all I ever did with my jobs. I did the bare minimum to make a check. I needed to get fired to ignite that I needed to do this full time and look. So even though I'm applying for jobs, I don't want them. I remember doing a job interview. I shit you not, I'm doing this the entire time. Yeah, I don't want to go back in corporate America. Yeah, it's just not my thing. I want the job, but I don't know. Like he could tell I wasn't interested. I was just doing it to go through the paces. There was a fear of what I was doing. And this is in like February, March. Then something kicked in and was like, dude, you're being an asshole. You've got all these opportunities to do work. And I was doing shows in Miami. And the guy in Miami was not really sponsoring the show. He really wasn't putting in the work for me to produce the show the way I needed to get it produced. So I was like, but hold on. He trusted me to do this. And I made networking connections in Miami. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start putting myself out there and start getting shows in different areas. I started doing it slowly, started picking up stuff slowly, and started creating revenue. And a New Jersey weed man came to me and said, listen, our podcast guy quit and he does our comedy show. Do you want to do it? I'll pay you in cash. And I was like, cool, got it. Boom, won. So there was that. Then I booked up with another company, and I said, I produce comedy shows. If you let me do a comedy show for you, you just pay me my rate and we're good. Boom. I get 2 of those a month. Now I also go to apartment complexes and started doing that. I started putting my stuff out everywhere. Started doing a comedy show for the town. I have a veterans comedy show coming up. I started doing all these little things that were innately, again, in my wheelhouse that I was just not doing and not realizing that I have the power to do. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it happen. And slowly but surely it started coming together. And now I'm working on a public speaking, which public speaking is hard to do. But if you get the one reference from a superintendent, that uncaps every superintendent in your state. So I have a friend that works in LA, which is the second biggest school district. So now between LA, New York, and New Jersey, I'm going to uncap my public speaking. I got another friend that works in corporate America. I'm going to uncap that somehow. So you have to believe again in who you are, and you have to look at your resources and say, this is where I'm going, and I have to do what I have to do to get there. I am no longer looking at corporate America as an option. I need benefits, yes, but if I open up a C Corp, and then underneath the C Corp, I put 2 LLCs, one as the comedy and one as the public speaking, I can pay the benefits from both of those into the C Corp, and I can still write the benefits off, and it's not like I'm paying for the freaking benefits at all.
Wonderful.
So again, I had to put my brain into overdrive and realize this, because if I didn't think bigger, because at first I'm like, oh, put them all underneath one cap. And I'm like, well, if I put them underneath one cap, what I can write off as taxes is going to kill me. But then I started reading up C Corp, public speaking, comedy. I could write the mileage off for comedy, but I could write the actual gas off underneath the C Corp. So it's like double dipping, but it's not, because they're 3 different entities, which again, you have to think business when you're doing it. So now, knowing this, I said, why am I not putting myself out there as big as and bad as I can? You have to think bigger than smaller. So every weekend I go out to 3 or 4 venues and give them. So now this is how I beat everybody. You get a flyer, you get 4 references, you get my card, and you get a coverage of insurance that says that I'm a fully insured person. They could go to my website, which just goes to my Facebook page. All of that is there. So when everybody else is coming in with a handshake and a business card, I'm coming in with references, with phone numbers and emails that they can actually call and get and say, holy shit, this guy knows what he's doing.
Sure.
I've done music festivals, private events. You've got to be willing. What I love is your hustle, your hustle and bust. I love that, because you have to hustle if you're going to work for yourself.
Right.
You have to be willing to go the extra mile. And getting fired forced me to realize one thing. I've got to go the extra mile. Had I not got fired, I would have continued to wait for someone to give me a check. And I would have said, oh, I got 3 or 4 venues. That's enough to put a little bit of money to the side. But if I push myself the way I can, I literally can. And here's the thing. Somebody's going to say that doesn't sound like a lot. I can make $80,000 cash and live like I'm making $200,000 a year, because I created 3 separate entities, and now my tax write-offs and everything else like that, I'm able to use my money the right way. I'm not registered in Jersey anymore. I'm registered in, I think, Florida. Like, again, thinking business-wise. If you're not thinking big, you're thinking small. And if you're thinking small, you can't be successful.
Well, look, I think how you're defining success, freedom is a big deal for you. You don't want to be stuck in a cubicle. And if you can meet your living expenses, I can't think of a better starting line definition of success than that right there. And then you build over time.
You're the ultimate entrepreneur.
You're a solo entrepreneur with multiple streams of income that you're building, and you're growing over time. I mean, that sums it up great right there.
Yeah,
it's not easy, and it's an everyday struggle. And I don't struggle with depression. I struggle with overthinking. And when you overthink it, you stop doing anything. Your production slows down because you're so busy overthinking the next piece that you just, I don't know what to do now. I don't know where to go. I don't know what I'm supposed to touch. So I'm trying to teach myself not to overthink it and just get things done. It's not easy. I read a book called The One Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you should think of one thing. Every week you should think of one thing. Every month you should think of one thing. Every year you should think of one thing.
Right.
That pushes you to get things done. And it was an amazing book. I read it again. I was flying out to California, so I just popped it open and read it, and it changed the way I looked at the world because, again, I'm an overthinker. So being an overthinker, my brain is constantly firing off this. Biggest dream I want to do is a comedy concert, and I want to host it. Mr. Direct's Real Talk Comedy. I'm the host, and then I've got some great names. In a small, I'm trying to figure out how to put together a Northeast comedy tour of like Boston, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and I just get some heavyweights from these areas, and we get some sponsorship, and we just go to these three or four places, and we just pack the house in and kill. And I'm just the host. That's it. I'm just the host.
Great goal.
What are some of the names of the comedians that you think you might be able to get?
What I'm trying to do is get lesser known names, because here's the problem.
Sure.
Some of the funniest people in comedy you never heard of.
Go ahead.
And some of these guys have traveled and people know them, but I don't think they're getting their just due, because you got to think about comedy. Comedy is subjective, and comedy is at the end of the day, comedy is marketing. And in the game of marketing, who's the most marketable? Technically, I can market myself. If I was to hit the lottery tomorrow for 110 mil, you guys would be like, this guy's an idiot, because you would see me everywhere. You would see my name on a billboard, which, by the way, I told people they were going to see my name on a billboard one day. My name, Mr. Direct Comedy, is on a billboard on Route 1 for big shots. That's why I say speak your shit into existence. My name is on a billboard.
That's cool.
So my thing is, again, it's the comics that I want. They're lesser known, but they've done stuff and they're just hilarious. And it's built. If you think about it, it's all about building it. You know what I mean? It's all about building it and bringing it together. And what I realized about comedy is, there's people who are making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year in their comics, and you never heard of them. Mm-hmm. And how are they doing this? They're working, they're hustling, they're putting the work in, they're putting the effort in. And why not put some of these people on the map? Like one of the guys that I first started doing this with when I came back to Jersey, Gordon Baker Bone. Hilarious guy, absolutely hysterical. And what I love about him is, again, he's real talk. His stuff is real talk, but he does the little offshoots. He does the little, whimsical stuff and things like that, but he's hilarious. And he does a series called Drunk Black History. It's on YouTube, and it's at him and another guy, and he's had a couple of famous comedians. He had one guy, I forget the guy's name, from the Today Show, from the Daily Show. He had one of the comedians from the Daily Show on his show, because one of his guys knew him. And he's written for MTV, and the guy's just absolutely hysterical. I had him headline my show at Big Shots, and he killed. So I love that. You know what I mean? There's that. Then there's the what I want is, I want a diverse show. So I want a black guy, I want a gay guy, I want a woman, I want a lesbian, I want a trans person. I want somebody from every walk of life that kills. The reason being is, if you see flyers, oh, well, it's all white people. Oh, it's all black people and one white person. Oh, it's all white people and one black person. It's all gay people and one heterosexual person. The reason why this world is so divided is because everybody is segmenting themselves. Comedy is comedy. Funny is funny. If I could tell this joke to a black crowd, I should be able to tell this joke to a white crowd. And if I could tell that joke to every audience and have them laugh, I win. And that's the goal. That's the high end goal of producing a comedy show. When I see people walking through, I see people from every walk of life laughing their asses off. When I see people walking away from a show and they're like, oh my God, I would say the most rewarding thing is not when someone says, read your book, loved it, which has happened a handful of times from people I didn't suspect. Hey, dude, I got your book. Freaking great, man. I mean, it's funny, relatable, love it. It's humbling, but the best is when I walk into an audience and I do a show and someone says, you're funny. And it's weird because when you tell a joke, either one of you guys can tell a joke. Somebody could walk away and be like, hey, Mark, you're funny. Hey, Mike, you're funny. And you're like, I mean, I'm funny. Okay. For me, when someone says I'm funny, out of all these comics that I put on stage for you, that's a sense of accomplishment because I'm able to trigger laughter. And that's the hardest thing in the world to do, is to trigger laughter with honesty.
Look, what I love about that is they're the unknown comics that you'd be lifting up along the way with that tour. It's a great thought.
You have to. In this world, if you have a gift, you have to lift other people up. It's great to make money, but it's better to lift other people up and give people their props, give people their just due. Again, I don't know where I got instinctually. I had one of my mentors said to me, I don't know if you're a comic in a producer's body or if you're a producer in a comics body, because you're able to do both in an odd way that most people can't do. And I'm always like, just let me win the lottery for 110 million. Then you'll see the work.
Yeah, look.
Then you'll see the work.
Look, I think that's a great way to wrap up. You got multi-skilled and you got lifting people up. I mean, that sums it up right there in terms of what we're trying to do with the Hustle or Bust. We're trying to tell stories just like yours, multi-skilled, multiple streams of income, lifting people up. Great way to think about it.
And you're the ultimate entrepreneur, I think. I mean, you have to answer. You answer to yourself, and you're honest about that, and you're straightforward.
First of all, thank you guys for even considering me for the interview. I really appreciate it. It's an amazing thing, and I love the fact that we spoke about this before you ever did it. And I love the execution, because a lot of people talk and they don't want to execute. You guys were like, "Oh no, we're going to do it."
You said that. It's
Well, Marklyn was one of the first.
Just say yes.
He's the first one that gave us some advice on how to. We're thinking about it, and exactly. he gave us 3 or 4 good ideas, and we're like, all right, let's freaking roll with this thing. Let's see what happens.
It's the whole idea. I mean, you remember the campaign years and years ago called "Just Say No." This is the "Just Say Yes" campaign.
That's right.
That's the truth. We like to think that we do that here, with Paver Art, but in your particular case, it's you're by yourself. You've got it's so hard. It's so hard, but you've been a success at it, and good for you.
Well, look, thank you for taking the time, Marklyn. Look, we enjoyed it, and I'm sure if you're open to it, we'd love to have you back on down the road.
Before I go, I do want to add one more shameless plug.
Please.
Of course.
I have a second book called Facebook Conversations: The Good, the Funny, the Ugly.
Sweet.
That's on Amazon too. Make sure you guys go check it out. So yes, I'm a twice published author, which is weird. I'm a writer without being a writer, but I'm a writer. It's the oddest thing in the world.
And where do people follow you if they want to learn more?
Well, it's funny. I'm just launching. Well, you can find me at Marklyn Speaks, MarklynSpeaks.com. I will reply to your email and send it to you. But I'm also launching within the next week my Instagram, my Facebook and Instagram page, Marklyn Speaks. Now, the reason why I did that, when I spoke to the school, 2 of the ladies were like, "Oh my God, you're great. How can I follow you?" And I really didn't put much into it because I kind of wanted the motivational speaking to be kind of word of mouth. But I'm realizing people kind of want to know that they can follow you and follow your journey.
Sure.
And everyone can follow my journey with Mr. Direct Comedy. Just look it up, MisterDirect Comedy. But for me, it really comes down to, everyone's got to follow you. Everybody wants to follow your journey when they support. So I got to start this whole entire Marklyn Speaks piece, which, you know, I don't know how I fell into this, but I'm saying yes. You know, I'm just doing my best to say yes.
Yep. Look, when you get that page up, shoot us the link. We'll push it out.
Definitely will. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Good talking to you, Marklyn. We'll talk soon.
Let me know when the link comes up so I can share it.
We'll do.
Thank you, Marklyn. Appreciate it very much.
Good talking to you.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
All right.